We've noticed that we've had a number of folks have viewed the recordings, which has been really good. Those folks that aren't quite ready to get up at 7:30 in the morning to watch live. Remind everyone, please remain on mute until you speak. The mute button is located in the bottom. If you move your cursor down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see the microphone. You can click on that to unmute. If you've called in, *6 on your mobile phone will mute you. *6 will unmute you. If you have any questions or comments that you would like to make for any of our guests today, or just to add to our discussion, you can put your name in the chat box or your comment. We'll be happy to call on you, and then you can unmute yourself and join our discussion. This is our coffee chat for Black History Month celebration. Very, very excited. We'll begin in a few moments. While we're waiting, I will mention a couple events that are coming up. You may want to put on your calendar. On February 16th will be my next cooking connection. We had a very successful one last month with our Bavarian chef Dieter Blossel out in Hagerstown with his sous chef, none other than Circuit Court Judge Brett Wilson from Hagerstown. That was a lot of fun. In fact, still have some leftover spätzle from that dinner. It was quite good. Although I did throw my own take on it with adding crab meat and bacon. Bacon and crab go together quite well. But Nancy Longo, Chef Longo, will be from Pure Point Restaurant down in Fells Point. We'll be doing a Mardi Gras themed cooking Cajun style. So wear your beads and wear your hat, favorite libations, and we'll have a lot of fun celebrating on February the 16th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. The recipes will go out in advance like normal, and you can join us and cook or just sit back, watch, and relax and enjoy a glass of your favorite libation, whatever that may be. Also, don't forget our next coffee chat will be the first Wednesday of March, where we're going to talk about in-house counsel in the past to working for corporations as in-house corporate counsel. We'll have a number of attorneys that will be joining us from various organizations around the state, corporations, and institutions. Should be a lively discussion and a fun way. So if you are thinking about going into in-house counsel work or doing work for in-house counsel, or just interested or know someone, please pass on the message to join us on the first Wednesday of March, which is March 3rd. That also is from 7:30 to 8:30. So why don't we begin and kick off? Welcome to everybody. I'm Mark Skirty and president of the MSBA this year, and I just want to welcome our guests, welcome you all for joining us for the celebration of Black History Month. With us this morning, we have a number of legal icons across our state, and we're going to go through some questions and answers and just an informal discussion about their life experiences, how they got to their positions, and some of the challenges that they faced in our profession. With us this morning, I'll just go through a very quick introduction. Many of these folks you already know, but we have with us first is our administrative judge out of Howard County, and that's Judge Pamela Brown. Judge Brown has been an associate judge since 2002. Her accolades and awards are very numerous. I'm not going to go into all of those, but I could tell you that my contact with Judge Brown was back in the day when Judge Brown was president of the City Bar Association. She was an inspiration to me, and in fact, I got an award from her. My family still loves her to death to this day. They always ask how she's doing, but she actually helped get me inspired to think about bar leadership. And I do attribute her mentorship and friendship to get me to move up the chain to where I am today as state bar president. So for that, I thank Judge Brown and welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. Next we have is Judge Bebe Berry, who's an associate judge in Montgomery County Circuit Court. She just went through an election, so I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that. She is a graduate from Georgetown Law Center, been a member of the bar since 2001, was a former equity shareholder at Paley Rothman, member of both DC and Maryland Bar. We welcome Judge Barry. Next, we have Harry Johnson, who's a partner at Whiteford, Taylor, and Preston LLP. I guess it's now just Whiteford. I think everybody shortened their names, so Harry can correct me on that. But Harry was the first African-American lawyer to move from associate to equity partner in a majority law firm in Maryland. He was also the first African-American president of the MSBA in 2003, 2004. So Harry has a strong tie to our Bar Association. He actually helped start and created the Leadership Academy. We'll hear a little bit about that from him. In addition, one of the things that I think was really interesting is his connection with our fourth guest this morning, which is Magistrate Moniece Brown. She was family magistrate at the Circuit Court, Charles County, and she had met Mr. Johnson at a bar event conference back in 2011, if I recall, and became her mentor. She is been with Charles County. I think you were the first magistrate judge appointed in that district since 2014, and we'll hear a lot more about your accomplishments. So with that, let me kick us off by asking the question to Judge Brown. Quickly, if you could just share with us, how did you get to where you are in your career? I mean, everywhere you look, Judge Brown is there, whether ABA, MSBA, Howard County, you name it, you're there. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you were in your career and what decisions and lessons have you learned? Judge Brown.
Thank you. Some of my career is serendipity. I think a lot of it is hard work. And, when I first began my career, there were very few women of color. There were no African-American women partners in any majority firm. And there weren't many women of color on boards and commissions. So I started out doing a lot of volunteer work, trying to give back to the community. And that parlayed into some board service. And I had wonderful mentors along the way that sort of guided and molded the kind of practice that I wanted to have. I was very fortunate to have to be employed in the city law department, and the city solicitor at the time was Ben Brown, who was very a wonderful mentor to me. During my law school career, I first met Charlie Dorsey, who I consider my predominant mentor, because I was president of the Student Bar Association. So my career has been a lot focused in the community and a lot focused in the bar. And my choice of bar activities was not really easy. Many times, especially during my young lawyer days, I would be the only person, I would say the brown spot in the room. And sometimes it wasn't enjoyable, to be honest with you, but you just have to keep persevering. I think things have changed markedly, but not to where they need to be. So the career path went, and I always thought that I knew I would like to be a lawyer when I was in high school. And I felt that the law was a place that you could make a difference in the world, a difference in people's lives, and be a change agent. I was discouraged by my high school counselors. They didn't know any women lawyers. They didn't know any Black lawyers. So they encouraged me to be a nurse or a social worker, like my mother, or in education. But I really persevered, and I did have role models along the way that guided me. And I think the highest calling is to serve the public, and being a judge to me is serving the public in an incredible way, and it's an honor. And I love my job every day. I've been on the bench almost 19 years, and hope to be around a little bit longer, and I enjoy it.
Great. Thank you, Judge Brown. Harry, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path?
Thank you, Judge Skirty. When you've been at the same place for 42 years, it doesn't look like you've had much of a path. But I think that what I would say is that really my career is evidence of paths not taken. There were many challenges. Judge Brown and I were in bar review class together. Actually, we know each other from high school student council days, but When I came to this law firm as a summer associate, I had an opportunity to work on a project during the second year of law school. They offered me a job to work that summer. There were 7 of us that summer associates, and I was the only one that was offered a permanent job at the firm. So I decided I was in hog heaven. I was happy. So I decided I would stay here. But there were many, it was very difficult because there weren't role models in the profession. There weren't other African-American partners at the major law firms at the time. And frankly, while Woody Preston and this firm welcomed me into the firm, there were challenges with clients and with others about having an African-American lawyer in the law firm because it was just not what the big firms were doing at that time. The climate changed a little bit because that's around the same time that Kurt Schmoke became elected mayor was when I became a partner. And so some of the firms thought it made more sense to try to have more diversity. But the reason, and I talked about choices made or not made. I mean, when I was about a 4th year associate, I was considering taking a job somewhere else. And as Pamela said, there are several people who were mentors to me, people inside the firm, like Natalie McSherry, who's president-elect of the State Bar, and Ward Coe were 2 great mentors in the firm. But I also had people outside the firm who would say things to people like Woody Preston and others at the firm. They would say, "How's Johnson doing at the firm?" So that let people here know that other people were watching what was going on with me at the firm. And the last point I guess I'll leave about why I've stayed here this long is that Judge David Mitchell, who was a great mentor for me, who was a circuit court judge in Baltimore City. I think he now sits on the Eastern Shore from time to time, but Judge Mitchell was a great friend and mentor to me. And he told me when I was thinking about leaving, he said, "Harry, just make partner at the firm to show that it can be done." He said, "You could do whatever you want to after you make partner, but just make partner and show that it can be done at a major law firm." And he said, "If any firm is going to give the opportunity, your firm is the place to do it." So I followed his advice. And I blame David because now I've been here for 42 years. It's all his fault that I'm still here. But that was, again, a choice made based on listening to someone who I respected and taking his advice. So that's sort of how I've gotten to where I am right now.
Thank you. And it's interesting because Judge Mitchell was actually very instrumental in keeping me in law school. He was my writing professor at the time at UB, and I was going to take a year's sabbatical, and he and I sat down, and he was the one that really got me to rethink it and stay in the practice in the law class that year and not take that year off. So he's affected many of our lives. It's very interesting. Magistrate Brown, tell us a little bit about your path.
Good morning, everyone. Judge Skirty, thank you for inviting me to this coffee talk. My career path started, and I think just like Judge Brown and Mr. Johnson, it's a lot of, paths that you choose, get some directions when you're facing some kind of obstacles. And Judge Brown and Mr. Johnson and Judge Barry have all become mentors to me and good friends in this aspect. I clerked for Judge Weatherly in the Circuit Court for Prince George's County, and everybody knows Judge Weatherly is the happy, friendly, white-haired lady. I'm not sure when you guys met her, but when I met her, she had white hair. And she took me under her wing. And, Judge Weatherly is a white woman, and she said to me, here's where you need to go. You need to go to J. Franklin board meetings. You need to go to Women's Bar Association meetings. You need to go to all of these things. And although she wasn't as involved in all of these organizations, she just wanted me to have the experience and mentors that looked like me that could guide me in that way. And I always cherish her. Her birthday is actually coming up next month, and usually we get together, but she's been very strict with COVID, so we might just do a Zoom instead. And then from Judge Weatherly, I worked for Senator Miller, and may he rest in peace. But he was very instrumental in terms of helping further shape my commitment to the community and letting me know that just being a lawyer wasn't necessarily all about, trials and the glitz and glamour, but it was really about, for him, serving his constituents, and for us, serving our clients. And, I worked for the State Attorney's Office in Charles County, and I've always been in public service and worked with different organizations and took leadership positions. And, you know, what's been really great about my mentors is whenever I've had a situation or I felt challenged, they would say sometimes when a door closes, you know, a window opens, and every door that's closed doesn't mean that you should kick it down. Sometimes there might be a fire behind it. Don't kick down the door. So that's been very helpful. And Magistrate Elaine Patrick from Judge Brown's district in Howard County, she was a very, very, very big mentor, very calm, very peaceful. And she really helped work on honing my demeanor on the bench. And I think that's very important, as obviously Judge Barry and Judge Brown, yourself, Judge Skirty, know, having a good demeanor, being calm, knowing when to take a break, those types of skills, you know, you can kind of fake it till you make it. But when you have people kind of walking you through the steps, it really helps you to become refined. And then ultimately the goal is to, you know, put a hand behind you as you're climbing. So you want to mentor those that are coming up behind you. And that's kind of been where my path to get me where I am.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Magistrate. Judge Barry, coming off of a election, and you've helped, I mean, tremendously with our celebration of the 18th Amendment that we had last fall. You are everywhere. So tell us a little bit about your path to your career and successes.
Yes, thank you, Judge Skirty. I'm so happy to be here. It is super early, but that's okay.
A little bit louder if you could. I think the volume, there we go.
Okay. Am I good?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. So Judge Brown talked about serendipity, and when she said that, I thought, yeah, that's about it. So I think my career started, well, when I first think about how it started, it's getting knocked up in college. I don't suggest that you get knocked up in college if you can avoid it, but that's what sort of started it, because I knew that I was going to, it came to my attention that I was going to essentially be raising my child without the other parent. And I had to figure out pretty quickly how I was going to support her. My parents had both gone to law school, but they had never gone beyond that. They hadn't passed the bar exam or become attorneys. Both were in education, my mom in higher education and my dad in high school. But there are law books all around, and I remember them being gone from being in law school. I think they went in the evenings. And so I think I just, you know, I was comfortable with that idea. So I because I had to earn money pretty quickly, I went to a paralegal program, a summer intensive paralegal program during my pregnancy. And then after my child was born, I got a job with one of the firms in DC. And working as a paralegal was great, but you see all of these, I mean, for me, it was, you see all these people who were, these kids who are significantly, at this point, becoming younger and younger, and to you at least, and they're coming in making all kinds of money and don't know anything from my perspective. So I thought, okay, I need to go to law school. I need to, you know, broaden my horizons a little bit. So I went to law school in the evening. I still had to work full time. And it was there that I developed my interest in family law. And that was also connected to my own personal family legal issues with my daughter as well. And I just wanted to, I mean, it really was understanding that feeling of being in court and being uncomfortable and wanting help and advice. And I wanted to be the person that made people more comfortable when they were in court and gave them that help and advice. And so I started at Joseph Greenwald and Lake. I was there for 3 years. And I think it was Judge Moniz Brown that talked about, you know, doors closing and, you know, realizing that that's not the end of the story, because I really, over the course of those 3 years, it just was a bad fit. And I had a mentor at the firm who said, well, why don't you look at a position with Glenn Cooper? And Glenn Cooper was a perfect fit for me and a great mentor. So that's sort of my journey to there. And then the journey to the bench really was a natural progression of things because I was so involved in the bar. I wanted my career to be one where it wasn't just litigating cases and being in my office. I was out there and people knew me and I knew them, and I had mentors and I was able to mentor. It's just, I love that feeling. And so that's what eventually led me to public service full time.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Judge Barry, want to also recognize two of my task force chairs, and that's Pilar Nichols and Daryl Tarver. And I thank you both for joining us. They head up our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and that has been a big initiative this year for the MSBA in making sure that across all of our governance structure, we have and address diversity and inclusive issues. So I welcome both of our committee chairs. They were sort of the genesis of this program this morning, and I thank both Pilar and Daryl for the hard work that you have done, and we look forward to seeing the rest of the work for the year and recommendations to the Board of Governors coming up in May. So one of the themes that I've heard, a common thread that each of you talked about, were challenges that you all faced individually throughout your career. Many different challenges, whether it was, pregnancy early on and making some career decisions and having to kind of deal with a whole change in your lifestyle and raising a child, to some of the challenges faced in an office kind of setting where you were the only person of color. And Harry, one of the things you mentioned, and I'd like you to expand upon if you don't mind, is the challenge you said with clients. Tom, can you tell us a little bit more about sort of what those challenges were and how you dealt with it?
Sure, President Scurry. When I first, it wasn't only challenges with clients, it was challenges with some of the lawyers in the firm also. So the first challenge was getting work, because certain people would give you work, certain other people would not give you work. And so that was the first challenge that had to be overcome. I even remember that when the bar exam was taken, I had several partners come by my office and say, no one has ever failed the bar exam at this firm. And they made a point of coming around and telling me that. Well, as it turned out, I passed the bar exam, and one of the other guys didn't pass the bar exam, who everybody thought was this brilliant genius. So those are the kind of things that I think in many respects that were unintended, that were sort of institutional things that people did. The other thing was the client base that the firm had. When I started working here, we did a lot of insurance defense work. And anyone who has worked with insurance companies, especially in the late 70s and early 80s, the insurance claims reps and agents that we dealt with weren't the most enlightened people in the world. Let me just say it that way. They had a way of doing things. They were old school. There weren't a lot of women involved in the business. And so it was sort of a cultural change for them to deal with me. But one of my biggest supporters became the claims manager for a company who shall remain nameless, but he was from West Virginia. He was very conservative, and we were like oil and water, except we got along great because we understood each other. And when I started winning cases for him, he was demanding that the firm put me on cases. Even though we were like oil and water, we would talk about these things and we recognized we had differences, and actually, I was one of the few lawyers that was asked to speak at his retirement event. And at his retirement event, what I told the crowd, and everybody got a big laugh, is that this gentleman will tell you that he taught me everything that I know. And everybody got a big laugh out of that because he thought he did. So there were lots of challenges like that. The client base turned because once you have a little bit of success, then people are happy to have you working on their cases. And of course, in the firm, once you have a little bit of success, then everybody wants to claim your success as there is like, oh yeah, I knew he was gonna do it. But really Wardco was the person here who really supported me, looked out for me and protected me when some other people weren't as generous with their support as they should have been.
Thank you. Magistrate Brown, the challenges that you face, you talked about, sometimes there might be a fire behind the door. You don't want to necessarily knock it down, but how do you kind of control that gut reaction of wanting to break that door down to kind of overcome some of these challenges?
You do the count I teach my kids: 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. What on earth is bothering me? No, I would say you take a deep breath, you praise the Lord for the blessings you've had, you cry to your friends that have been supportive, you go to your mentors when there's a challenge, you ask questions of people that are where you want to be and ask them how they got where they're going. One of my biggest challenges is I became a magistrate when I was 34. So after the whole settlement conference hearing, when we were done, they were like, so when do we get to see the magistrate? I was like, I'm the only one you get today. And sometimes you don't know if it's a matter of age, if it's a matter of your sex, if it's a matter of your race. It could be any one of the three, or one will eventually go away, but the other two are here to stay. So you just don't really know what it is that's making people not feel like you're it, or you're the end of the rope for that day anyway. And you just work on your patience, and you write in your journal, you talk to your friends, and you try to find a safe space to be silly and to be fun and to let go, and really have places of privacy where you can kind of unwind. And I'm very, very blessed to have people who have held my confidences when I have felt that I was challenged or overlooked, and you kind of get back on the horse and keep on riding.
Thank you.
That's a shout out to my dad. He really likes Western movies.
I see your mom and your dad there. We welcome them. Thank you.
Yeah, my parents are from Jamaica, and when they were in Jamaica, apparently they had like 3 channels, and it played country music and Western. So you would never know this, but Jamaicans really love country music, and they love Westerns.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we're so glad you could join us. Speaking of ageless, Judge Brown, tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you faced. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you for that gracious, that I'm old. Yes, I'm old, and I embrace it. So I want to piggyback on a couple of things that both Magistrate Brown and Mr. Johnson said, and that's, the microaggressions that Harry experienced with the people coming around the firm and saying, XYZ. I started my career in government practice, and I was in the law department, then the Attorney General's office, and I loved the public practice of law. But during that time, again, there were women that were engaged in the public practice of law and were doing relatively well. There were no women, the chief solicitor or the state's attorney, but you felt that there was a career path that you could engage in there and be successful. But that wasn't without its challenges. For the younger members of the bar, we've had a number of task force on gender and on race in the 80s that clearly demonstrated the disparity in treatment of women in the practice, women as members of the profession, but also women in the family law arena, et cetera. And the same on the diversity end. Some of the challenges were very blatant. Some of the challenges could be from colleagues of being very disrespectful, calling me little lady in a trial posture with the judge not correcting him or her. 2 instances I just fondly remember of going to Western Maryland to try a case. It was everybody was in the judge's chambers. I was in the courtroom. And nobody invited me back to chambers. And finally I said, I've been here since 7:30, or I see that other people keep going back to the judge's chambers. She goes, oh, well, I thought you were a social worker or something. So I was like, okay. Another instance, I had 4 colleagues. I'll put them on blast. And I had a case on the shore. And every time we went into chambers for a discussion, the gentleman, it was just me and 4 other lawyers representing carriers and the insurance commission and somebody else. And every time the gentleman would speak, the judge would be fully engaged. every time I would speak, he would just be looking down at the floor, very disinterested. So I took it upon myself the next time I said something to bend my head down so I could have direct eye contact. Then he closed his eyes and he reared back in his chair. The guys that were with me, one guy actually took a gasp. And I think that sort of shocked the judge that somebody sort of was acknowledging what his conduct was. And for me, as a young practitioner, I didn't know if that was something that I should report or what I should do as a young practitioner. So I spoke to others, and their suggestion was, perhaps having somebody else speak to the judge. It may be just not knowing, it may be purposeful, it may be those what I now call microaggressions. You just don't know. So there are doors that will shut and doors that will open. So the bottom line is you have to be a strong constitution, you have to persevere. I really wanted to be a judge, and I was nominated 3 different times before I was actually selected by the governor. So that was very, very disappointing each time that you made the list and you weren't selected, and you just feel like, oh my goodness, it's devastating, to be honest with you. But you persevere, you hone your craft, you continue to give back, you reach out and you pull other people behind you, which I'm so pleased. I love doing that. And I think, Master Brown, thank you for giving me a shout out. I mean, and Judge Skirty for you giving me a shout out, but that's part of, I think everybody on this panel and everybody listening has the ability to do that, reach back and pull somebody along with you in your career path. There are law students. There are people that haven't gone to law school yet. They could be scholars, and the University of Baltimore has a wonderful scholar program with the HBCU schools in our state. I mean, so there are things that each one of us can do. So as Magistrate Brown said, when a door shuts, you just have to go another way because it's not over till it's over. And I won't use the other thing because it would be fully incorrect. So.
And when Judge Brown, I just want to say, I remember I was a young lawyer. I'm a few years into practice, and I was standing around with my friends. Carl Eisler, he's on the Zoom today, and Judge Brown came over and she said, "You can't just keep talking to your friends. You're not here to just keep talking to your friends. Every time I see all you guys is hanging out with your friends that I already know, I'm going to say, go talk to somebody you don't know." And that's not so easy when you're a young lawyer. You just want to go hang out with your friend, let people know you're there. But it's the kind of nudge, we'll call it a nudge, we'll call it a push, we'll call it a shove in the right direction that's really helpful as a mentor. And then you learn to be a mentor to others by looking at those sorts of things. Don't just talk to your friends. I always learn that from Judge Brown. So thank you.
That's a great point. And speaking of speaking to people, not just your friends, Judge Barry, what challenges did you face this election in Montgomery County as you went around your jurisdiction?
Oh, wow. How much time do we have? So, when you go through the appointment process, I remember one attorney talked about how big of a deal it is that you've gone through that process, which is rigorous, and you are chosen, trusted by your peers and by the people who actually know what it takes to be a good attorney, know what it takes to be a good judge. And then and they said, okay, we're okay with you making these decisions for us, which is a huge, huge deal. And I think even although, obviously you need to be appointed by the governor, but that investigation and going through that and people choosing you, that was what I was most proud of. And so when you go through an election where it's just impossible for people to know the information that comes out, it's impossible. It's not as rigorous in terms of testing your capabilities and your background and things like that, but it is rigorous in terms of the time and energy and effort and understanding that the interests of the non-legal community is to some extent very similar to the legal community. They want someone who's going to be fair and who's going to do the work to make good decisions, but their interests are about just other things. And so you have to field those questions, try to figure out what you can answer, what you can't answer. And and there's a lot of, and I'm not being insulting, there's a lot of ignorance out there about what we do as attorneys and what we do as judges. And that's something that, I mean, to me, that's something that we have to work on as members of the judiciary, as members of the bar. We have to work on getting out to people what we do for the community. So, you know, the election, very, very challenging. If you know me, you know how strongly I feel about elections, getting rid of judicial elections. And you know, my hope is that we will. It was difficult.
Thank you. At this time, let me have Pilar. I think you have some questions for our panelists. Pilar?
I do, thank you, Judge Gertie. Magistrate Brown, what advice would you give to younger or less experienced lawyers who want to achieve success in the legal profession?
I would first say, be patient, learn your craft. You don't want to be all over the place trying to do types of different cases where you really don't have any mentors to help you with it, or where you might make a lot of mistakes, which leads me to my second piece of advice, which is make your reputation and make it early, because you can, you know, build a reputation over years and lose it very quickly, or you can have a horrible reputation, and even when you shift gears, people aren't really so sure. You know, people always believe that a leopard never changes its spots. So once you are someone who is known as being candid with the court, honest with opposing counsel, it kind of carries you along. I was at an executive board meeting, and one of our board meetings, this is for United Way, said, your reputation interprets people's, I think, like, review of how you behave. So for example, I forgot the exact terminology, but let's say you're someone who's always late. When you're late, everyone just knows that's the late person. But if you're someone who's always on time, that one time you're late, everyone goes into a panic and thinks something must have happened because your reputation precedes you. So you want to make sure that your reputation is something that people can interpret the good, assume the good, give you the benefit of the doubt. When you make a mistake, you should own up to it, apologize to, you know, immediately apologize, let the record reflect that there was an error. I had an attorney one time, he misspoke and mentioned the wrong page for the exhibit. And he said that it's to the opposing counsel, well, I sent this to you in discovery, it was page this of the discovery. And he came back and realized that his paralegal had done one page, and then he, on his copy, it was a different page. As soon as we got back on the record, he apologized, and it was not a big deal, but he just wanted to make it clear that he wasn't trying to sideswipe the other attorney by confusing the method, you know, that it was this page instead of that. And I just find that to be very honorable. And those types of things carry a long way in this profession. This bar association has over 30,000 members, but, you know, everybody still knows your name very quickly from your reputation. So that would be my advice for young people.
Thank you, Magistrate Brown. Mr. Johnson, what advice would you give the younger lawyers who want to succeed?
Well, I've always thought that the one word that I would always tell people in this profession is listen. It's amazing what you learn if you stop talking, which is sort of against what we're doing now, but it's amazing what you learn if you stop talking and listen to people. You can really gain a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. People are willing to share with you. One of my tactics when I was on the executive committee of the Board of Governors several times before I became an officer. And I remember Judge Howe telling me that they thought that I always made these very thoughtful comments. And I told her, well, what I do is I wait and listen to what everybody else has to say, and then I say what I think. And so it wasn't that it was so thoughtful, but I would listen and synthesize what other people were saying. And so I agree that establishing reputation is really important, but I think everyone is willing to be a mentor, even if they say they're not. If you ask people for advice, they're willing to give it to you. That doesn't mean that you have to take the advice, but I think listening to people is one of the best things that young lawyers can do to help establish themselves in their career and to decide how they want to practice law.
Thank you very much. Judge Barry, I know that you mentor a lot. What would you say to the young lawyers who look at you and want to get to where you are?
So one thing I would say, I think one of my biggest personal challenges in my career is just getting out of my own way. And when something, I think a lot of us know this feeling of you've gone through a 4-day trial and you're riding home and you're thinking about all of the things you should have done and should have said that you didn't. Everybody does that, but at some point you have to put that aside and move forward. And that has been a challenge for me. And I imagine it's a challenge for a lot of people to quiet the noise in your head, is how I often put it. Do what you got to do. Chant if you have to, pray if you have to, think about, a special place if you have to, but quiet that noise and move on. That's very, very difficult. You have to recognize that there may be, there's that, trust yourself that there's some truth in your, and when you're being self-reflective, there might be some truth in that, but understand that we can also criticize ourselves to a point of just inaction, and don't do that. So that to me has been the most difficult thing, and that is what I'd want to hopefully encourage the younger attorneys, the younger folks, older folks, whoever coming up, just keep moving.
Thank you, Judge Barry. Judge Brown, you have been such a champion and leader for us, and so many of us look up to you. And we've been fortunate enough over the years to hear little pieces of wisdom. To those who have not had the opportunity, what would you say to them?
You're muted, Judge Brown.
I'm sorry. This is my probably 3,000th Zoom call, and I still need the unmute button. I think I would all the things that have already been said, that would be a definite number one. But I have 3 other things that I would suggest. The first is that you need to have a plan. I know Roz Bell, one time I was speaking with her and she said, everybody needs a 1-year, a 5-year, and a 10-year plan. So what do you want to have accomplished in 5 years? What do you want to have accomplished in 10 years? And that's both for your professional career and your personal life. If you say that I would like to have a significant other, I would like to have children. Yes, things happen, on their own, but if you're never if you're working 24/7, if you're never going out, if you're never engaging with other people, the probability of you meeting someone probably is remote. So that's part of that planning process. And I thought, how do you plan your personal life? But it was really true when I thought about it. And so, so you have to choose, you have to plan for things. That's number one for mine. The second is you have to give back. And I know that Sharon Goldsmith is on. There are ways that you can give back through MBLS, through other pro bono activities, but you can give back and you can be honing your craft because they allow you to take classes, to learn other skill sets that you may not have. So you can give back, not only through an organized program, through you being part of the PTA. Sometimes those meetings go on forever because nobody knows how to coalesce what everybody has said and make it in a concise way and move the discussion on. That if it's a soccer a program. Again, they may need help with organizing, and that's a skill set that we each have. And the third thing is that I really, really, really think that bar work is critical. The organized bar, we're in COVID. It's very difficult for us to communicate with one another, to be around one another. And I think our mental health suffers in many ways. So the final point is that you need to take care of yourself, that you need to find outlets, whether, whatever it is, to make sure that you're staying healthy, that you're staying intellectually challenged, however you choose to do that. Some people do word games. Some people do a variety of things that, crossword puzzles or whatever you choose. But make sure you stay intellectually challenged. And sometimes reading the newspaper and watching the news incessantly, most recently, is not a good way to try to relax, try to calm yourself. So, I did a big piece of turning off. I just would try to read books, and it's been a wonderful time during COVID to try to read books and do yoga for me by watching yoga on video. So those are my 4 points. And as I said, I know this is a bar association program that Pilar and Daryl are doing for us with Judge Skirty. But there's so many things that the organized bar can do for you. Number one, it allows you to meet people to advance your career by joining different committees that are substantive committees, as well as committees that are practice centered. And most importantly, the organized bar gives back in real ways to the community in ways that you perhaps as an individual can't do, whether it's financial contributions or otherwise. So I know that we all have a finite amount of money. And as a young lawyer, I would say, and as a young woman lawyer of color, there were 9 bar associations that I could literally be a member of. And I had to choose. I would let some national bars go off, whether it was the NBA or the ABA for a year, and go to other local bar associations. So just have a plan that in year 1 through 5, maybe the state bar would be my primary, or maybe a local or specialty bar will be my primary for those years. And then I'll jump back on a national level to get that national perspective, because the ABA is the only one that speaks with a national voice for the legal profession. So there are just so many different ways that you can, if you have that plan, which I cannot read in the chat and do this, so I just see somebody's talking about planning, but that's my 2 words. I know you have others to do, Pilar, so thanks.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn to Daryl for a second. Daryl, you have some questions for our panelists as we come to the final 15 minutes left.
Yes, and I'm going to apologize to Judge Brown, who just said that you would like to turn off the news, because I'm going to ask you all about some recent events and just the social unrest that we're experiencing as a result of the tragic deaths of African Americans. And in the wake of those tragic deaths, what can we as a legal profession, who have all taken an oath to equal protection of the laws, what can we do to strengthen and reaffirm our commitment to that equal protection when so many are doubting it now? And I'll start maybe with Mr. Johnson, if you could comment on that.
You must have seen that pensive look on my face, because that's a big thing to take a bite out of. I think the one thing that the legal profession can do, and we've seen this from our ABA president and others, is to speak truth to power. The profession has to call out these QAnon and crazy radical conspiracy theory folks and people who say that elections aren't elections. And we have to do things like protect ballot security. We have to do things like protect voting rights for folks, because people died and bled in the streets to get the people the right to vote. And now time has passed and people forget the sacrifices that people made. And it infuriates me when I hear people say, I'm not voting because it doesn't make a difference. Well, we can see that, for example, in Baltimore County in the last county executive election, the county executive won by 15 votes. I mean, and we can see how close the vote was in Georgia and in other states. Voting is very important. So as lawyers, and to preserve the rule of law, one of the most important things I think we can do to impact prosecutors who may not go after people they should go after, or other public officials that don't do what they're supposed to do, or judges that don't do what they're supposed to do, is to vote. I mean, I understand Judge Barry's position about contested elections, but we have to remember the reason that we have so many judges of color on the bench now is because there was a threat of an election against people that wouldn't appoint judges of color to the bench. So that's a very difficult question for all of us. I understand both sides of it, but to me, I think the most important thing we can do is get civics education back so people understand the importance of voting and getting out and expressing their votes. God bless Stacey Abrams.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And if I could turn to you next, Judge Barry, just because you have encountered the election process and you know, to maybe piggyback off of some of the comments that Mr. Johnson made.
Yeah, you know, I would say it's a very interesting position to be in as a Black woman during all this, going through an election and feeling on one hand, just the crushing blow of realizing that even though you hope that the community has gone farther, you really haven't gone as far as you would like, and you know, just being angry, just like a lot of people, and recognizing the anger and the frustration and the hurt of the community, and particularly being out there sort of boots on the ground and hearing it and talking to people, and not being able to put your head in the sand and not being able to ignore it by just going from your house to your car to your job and back to your house. It's an interesting perspective to be on that side of things, and also to recognize from my perspective, the damage that is done when people react to that social unrest without just considering considering everything, all of the circumstances. And so, and react with their votes and react with their behaviors. And so a reaction that, you know, from your own perspective, me having grown up in DC when it was still segregated, it's still to some extent segregated, but it was pretty deeply segregated back in the day. And just understanding that, you know, if I've said it before, if people recognize that if they feel like they can't get through, they are going to kick your door down, and they're going to come through. And so I agree 100% with Mr. Johnson. And I'll say I've gotten to know Terry, because Terry Zick is on the trial courts nominating commission. He was on when I was on. And Terry Zick is Mr. Johnson's partner, because he was just elevated to the Court of Special Appeals, but speaks very highly. So it's very good to meet you. But completely, I agree that these, you know, there are systems that are put in place because people of color and marginalized people in the community were not given access, have not been given an opportunity. And so this is encouraging me, and hopefully encouraging others, to ensure we are all in a position to help to provide that access, provide that mentorship, so that people feel even if I believe the reality is you have that chance, that people feel they have that chance, because that's really, that's what it's all about as well. I mean, that's part of what it's about, is making it known and inviting people, and hopefully they understand they can come to you.
Thank you, Judge Barry. That was powerful, and I appreciate the comments there. We'll maybe turn to Judge Camilla Brown and then Magistrate Munice Brown, if we can just, I know it's a weighty topic to close out on, but I want to hear from both of you if you'll give us the comments. Thank you. I'm sorry, you're muted again, Judge Brown. Thank you.
Now, it is a weighty topic, but it's one that we have to address. And it's one that I think we shy away from addressing my whole career. So we as lawyers have a unique skill set. And I think that we can be the people that help people engage in what everybody's calling, or some people are calling, I've called forever, courageous conversations, having direct conversations, confronting things when you see them. And I think bars and lawyers particularly can be engaged in those courageous conversations, those listening circles of calling people out and not like harming. I think that there is a desire for our society to be better. And in order for it to be better, it has to have adequate information. I consider myself kind of the mother of civics. I love civics. It's important that we educate the public about the rule of law, about separation of powers, about their individual responsibility, and we can do that. For those of you who are aspiring to be jurists, unfortunately, jurists for the most part can't have a public voice. And that's one of the things that I very much miss as a jurist, not being able to have a public voice on the issues of the day, which are critical and near and dear to me. And so you have to figure out how you can speak and how you can address issues. And that's why my Bar Association work has been a perfect outlet for me to engage in that way. So I think lawyers are uniquely suited during this time. As our association, under the leadership of Judge Skirty, I believe we had a number of people that acted as poll watchers who were lawyers that worked at the polls as election judges, encouraging others to do that, that we can make sure that those kinds of activities are done in a real way and making a difference in the community. But I think that we are central to ensuring that our democracy survives. That adage about, the first thing we do is kill all the lawyers is so true, because without lawyers in a community, the voice of reason, the voice about the rule of law, that there's anarchy and there's unrest that can't be controlled. So I think we have a very unique role to play. And I think we can do it in a way to be a leader. Lawyers, unfortunately, in every state legislature, the numbers are diminishing. It used to be that half of the state legislatures were made up of lawyers. That's not the fact anymore. I mean, it may be a fact about finances, et cetera, but that reasoned voice in policy is missing. So I encourage young lawyers and to make sure that they are out and doing the work of being publicly engaged. And I do see a better day. I don't see the glass as half empty. I see it as half full. And I think it's incumbent upon each one of us. This is a chosen profession. The learned professions are three: religion, medicine, and the law. So in addition to making a living at these professions, there is an ultimate calling of the public good for the law, for medicine. So I think that that's our legal obligation, to be out there having those courageous conversations. Many of you may not know, but our Chief Judge, Judge Barbera, has formed a task force on equal justice that's chaired by Judge Greg Wells and co-chaired by Yolanda Purton, for the judiciary to take a hard look and explore the issues related to race and bias So I think we're doing a lot, and I commend both Pilar and Daryl and the work of their committee. And I hope that we continue even during this time to have these conversations, to pull people into the dialogue, to have, a think tank of people, whether it's our stakeholders, as we would say, the public, those in law enforcement, those in the judiciary, to have those conversations that sometimes are difficult, but are necessary. And I've droned on too long.
Not at all. And that was in keeping with your phrase of courageous conversations. That was, courageous words for us all to kind of take in. So I appreciate that, Judge Brown. And, Magistrate Manice Brown, if you can close us out with a comment.
Sure, I'll be brief because I know Judge Gertie was hoping for a hard stop at 8:30, but this is obviously a hot topic. I would say that one of the most hurtful comments, someone very close to me said, how are you going to be a leader if you are a magistrate or you become a judge? You won't be able to speak out in the community. And I thought just the opposite. You think of Thurgood Marshall, you think of civil rights movement. It was all led by lawyers. And I feel honored to be part of a group, like Judge Brown explained, that promotes societal fairness. And ever since I was a small child, I used to write, my poor parents, letters to the newspaper whenever I would observe injustices in our town. And I would write and I would send pictures in because it would just bother me so much. And this is when I thought I was going to be a physician, but it wasn't the calling for me. It wasn't God's will for me to go that way. And I believe that, when you lay a foundation, when you promote fairness, when people feel like they've been heard, even if they don't get what they came for, if they feel like their voice was heard, that somebody like them is in a position like the positions that we've come to, it makes them believe that there's fairness. I think calling out microaggressions is something that's very hard to do, but I became committed actually during COVID to doing it. And I don't necessarily do it publicly. Depending on the relationship, I'll do it privately. So I'll say, well, why did you describe that person as articulate when that other person sounded the exact way? Am I articulate? And it kind of causes this, moment of discomfort. But I say, this is something that when you say this in a room of educated Black people, they're going to feel offended. It's not that we're articulate when somebody else who sounds the same way isn't articulate. It's expected of them, and we're not expected to sound that way. And you kind of break it down and have them think for a moment. I say, you don't have to answer out loud, but think who you describe as articulate and who isn't articulate. And then come back to me and we could be honest. It's about relationship building so you can have that conversation and people know, I'm not mad at you. I'm not saying you're racist. All I'm saying is we are indoctrinated by the news, by how we're raised, by our religion, by who we marry. All of these things have shaped us to who we are. And it's our job to become the best version of ourselves so that we can continue to serve in the legal field and promote what I call fundamental fairness. And Judge Gertie, I thank you for having me on this panel this morning.
Oh, I'm actually so thrilled that all four of you have joined us with a very enlightening conversation and discussion this morning. I think that this is a good place to end at this point, but to build relationships, to listen, to vote, to call out injustice when it's necessary or when it's seen. And have, most importantly, those courageous conversations. Those are my takeaways. I want to thank all of our panelists and guests this morning to continue this conversation. Pilar and Daryl, thank you again for making this happen this morning for our coffee chat. Thanks everyone for joining us. Remember, March 3rd is our next coffee chat regarding in-house counsel and pathways there. The next Cooking Connections will be on February the 16th, a Mardi Gras themed occasion with Chef Nancy Longo from Pierpoint Restaurant in Fells Point. So it'll be a lot of fun. We've got a lot of activities. Thank you all for being members of the Maryland State Bar. We truly appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great day.